Okay, so I just want to pretty much just highlight some of the things he talked about and just expand on them a little bit here. It won't take too much time here. So first thing I want to point out is when he said when you see an inefficiency in the market and you have an idea of how to correct that inefficiency and you have the resources and capability or the ability to bring together the resources. Um, the main thing here I want everyone to think about is the concept of bricklage when thinking about those resources. So a lot of times you might not have exactly what you need. Sometimes you might, but sometimes you can actually end up in a different venture than what you originally expected to be. Everyone knows what bricklage is, so that's the main thing I just want to point out on that part of it. I think this was a good article because it kind of went over a lot of the stuff we've already seen in this class. So.
You can just go back to the videos we watched already, like Jeff Bezos, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like he made it like more straightforward. So I
Right.
don't.
Yeah, it did definitely. It touched on a lot of stuff we went. That's why when I was seeing this, it's like, oh man, this would be a good little thing to go over and just talk about it. Um, the next thing and the most promising source of ideas for new businesses comes from customers and listening to the customers in order to understand what customers want, where they want it, how they want a product or service supplied, when they want it supplied, and at what price. And it's funny you just said that about Jeff Bezos. That's the note I made on it was recall how Jeff Bezos focused his business model on that of the customer's needs as opposed to that of the competitors' tendencies. And that's ultimately been a huge success factor for Amazon. So it's funny you just said that. That's the
Yeah.
same thing that came to my mind.
Or like the founder of Intuit, I forgot the name.
Scott Cook.
Scott, yeah, he was also talking about like those surveys, like always knows what their customer wants.
Right. Yeah, because it really focuses on what the customer's needs and wants are. Same as what Warren Buffett said. There's a trend we're seeing. Everything narrows right back down, or it comes right back around to that customer. So that's the main thing here. Then he says you can pursue these ideas by asking yourself some key questions, such as: is the market real? Is the product or service real? Can I win? What are the risks? And is it worth it? Um, and at this part, I just wanted to point out to just think about your feasibility analysis that you all did. So that'd just be a good way of attempting to answer most of those questions. You could answer most of those questions by conducting a feasibility analysis. Um, then he also says in the age of the internet, there's many entrepreneurs that started a company based on the perceived need. He mentioned eBay was the opportunity to connect a virtual flea market, connect people through a virtual flea market, so to connect buyers and sellers directly. Then he talked about Elon Musk, or Elon Musk. I actually watched the movie. It's funny because I was calling him Elon Musk, but I was watching actually Ballers. Have y'all seen the show Ballers with The Rock and everyone? But there was a part of the show. Sorry, I know I'm veering off a little bit. But it was like he was talking about just innovators and entrepreneurs, and he was like, like Bill Gates and Elon Musk. I was like, oh, I've been pronouncing his name wrong this whole time, so I guess it's Elon. Um, but anyways, it mentioned Elon Musk, which was also a graduate of Wharton from this college, so that's pretty cool. Where he created PayPal. We've already watched a video on Elon Musk, so we know about PayPal. And the main thing here is, they just all the companies addressed an unmet need in the marketplace. So that was the similarities that was amongst these companies and these young entrepreneurs. They all figured out a way to address a need that was unmet in that marketplace. It also says there's no substitute for understanding the unmet needs of customers because this is going to allow you to discover whether you're able to supply those needs at the price customers want to pay and at a price where you can still make a profit. And if you recall, we had that class about where most first time business owners and entrepreneurs tend to underprice their product. So I think this kind of could be a way of just trying to determine a good price by basing it upon the unmet needs of the customers. But I think in trying to do so, the biggest challenge is to try to meet the customer's needs with the good or service that's going to be priced so that both the company and that customer perceive or derives value out of the transaction. So obviously the customer the value they're going to get is their needs are going to be met through the good or service that you provide at a realistic price. And for the company, it's to be able to cover their operating and general and administrative and selling expenses in order to bring that market to price and still in turn generate revenue so that they can continue, as a going concern. So I think that's the main point there of trying to figure out that happy medium to where both win, both the customers and the actual business wins. And I think that's just a way of understanding those customers' needs is one way you can go about doing that. But that is a very challenging question: is what price do you actually set it at? He talked about some steps as far as um, a process of evaluating these new opportunities. The first step, ask if the market's real. And he says you can conduct an analysis, a customer analysis, by doing the, surveys. I just wanted to point out the concept statement, once again, going back to the feasibility analysis. You can obviously attempt to answer the question, who's my customer, with the who, where, what, when, if you do not go the route as far as doing the concept statement or, the customer analysis, trying to actually figure it out based upon that criteria there. The second thing he says is who is supplying the particular market. So obviously to do the competitor analysis, who else is in the market, and what are they doing for the customers. And by doing that, you can understand what needs is not met at that moment, and it'll also give you an opportunity of where you can differentiate yourself from existing players within that market. And I just thought of some ways here. Maybe we can beat a competitor's price due to better relationships with suppliers. Maybe provide a superior service for the same cost. So maybe just knowing that you're putting a little bit more effort in and just being able to do so at a price that's equal to that of a customer. So maybe not just having as large as of a profit margin, and maybe making up for it in other areas. And maybe that'll help you gain market share as well. And if there isn't a substitute product, maybe bringing a substitute product into that market. And he also says conduct an industry analysis to understand the attractiveness of the industry. If it's growing or shrinking, what power do the suppliers have in the industry, how many buyers there are, stuff of this sort. So just really knowing your industry is important. Another important thing about the industry he talked about was the regulations. And I know we've talked about regulations and how they can play a big role in whatever industries are. And some examples of how the regulations can affect the industry. If you're going to start a restaurant, like say that's your market you're trying to enter into, start like a restaurant or a little bar or something like that, then you're going to have to deal with the ABC company or the commissioner to get your ABC license. And that has to be renewed annually, and they'll do spot checks on you. You have to deal with, the food inspectors that come by. Sorry, I have a blank. Food inspectors that come by and actually make sure that your kitchen's up to par and you don't have any health issues or any critical factors that could be a potential threat or harmful to your customers. And understanding the political environment's huge, and understanding the regulatory environment of the industry, because obviously political parties can play a huge role in bringing in new regulations or doing away with regulations. So just knowing, keeping up with a little bit with political parties and stuff like that can help understand different industries as well. He also said to understand the need and tailor the product and or service to that need. Tailor your product to a need, to the customer's needs, as opposed to just bringing a product and trying to shove it down their throat. So that's an important thing too. Don't try to bring a product to the market and just saying, oh, this is going to be great for everyone, and just see how it does. You're better off to adjusting your product to that as to what the demands by the customers are. He also said when starting a business that there are many risks to be considered. The biggest source of risks within the company is that of the founders. Are they able to not just bring the company to actually start up, but can they actually grow it and maintain its growth? And really, do they have the knowledge, the passion, the connections, or the capital to make this a reality is the main thing they're looking for there. Technology risks, obviously, how long is the technology going to be relevant, or is it going to be the leading edge? And is there any intellectual property issues that we need to be concerned of as a company? Intellectual property issues there are is obviously trademarks, copyrights, patents, stuff of that sort. So in regards to that, we don't want to infringe on any of them if they're already existing. So we need to be aware of those. And if there isn't any that and we think that we could go about getting one of those, then we need to try to do that as well. Um, and obviously, technologies they they become obsolete quick, so we need to make sure we stay with the wave, or obviously we'll get left behind in that regard. Um, the market for the product is the second one of the second risks. He said he pointed out two big uncertainties. The customer's willingness to buy is the first one, and the second one being what is the pace that competitors will be able to imitate you. So just pretty much just you have to be able to do something to be able to keep them from catching up with you and ensure that the customers want to buy your
That's
product.
also what Jeff Bezos, when he was saying every time there's like some innovation in the company, you have like around 2 years like advantage.
Right.
Like competitors are gonna do the same thing.
Be-
That's
before
why I
they-
was surprised that Amazon had like I don't know, like 6, 7, 8 like ahead of other companies.
Right.
Like no one tried to imitate them.
Right. And another thing to point out is how when we watched the Facebook video,
Yeah.
what they do, they bought out, was it Twitter or what? Instagram, because they seen that it was going to probably catch
Yeah.
market share, and so they just bought them out and just took control of it. So there's different ways you can go about getting it, and yeah, usually I say about 2 years probably is about the lead way you have on having the up on your competitor until they figure out what you're doing or imitate it. So those are just some good things to know about entering into it as well. Some of the risks associated with the industry, availability of supply, that could be affected. Obviously, if we're a manufacturer, the raw materials could be affected by. Obviously, it's dependent upon the industry, but it could be affected by weather, tariffs, or just like malfunctions, like the BP oil spill. So, what just something just not put together correctly, or not being just looked over or ran the way that it should be, cutting corners for cost, and it ultimately had a huge effect on gas prices, which had an effect on the trucking industry and just all around. It put a higher price on goods being transported because it all came down to that fuel cost, which the derivative of the fuel was the oil. So obviously, if it went up, then the fuel is going to go up, and you'll see that across going along across the board. And obviously, barriers to entry might change, regulations might change. The financial risks, are you going to be able to raise the money early on or continue to be able to get people to put money in? I guess the biggest factor there is what form, how are you going to go about raising that capital? Are you going to do it through debt or equity? Does everyone understand the difference between how do you go about raising capital, whether it be debt or equity? Everyone's good. Okay. So pretty much debt, like bonds and taking out loans and stuff, you're going to pay interest upon that. And if you do the equity, you're going to give them a share, like a stock within your company, where they'll actually receive some ownership rights. So that's the difference, how you want to go about that. And obviously, he says the most frequent mistake people do when they enter into the market is thinking that everyone's like yourself. So if you like it, everyone else is going to like it. Obviously, that's not true. Everyone's different. They have different tendencies, different tastes or different likes. And the other thing is that they don't focus their needs on the customers. So the main thing is just really focus your needs on whatever the customer wants. One thing I found interesting that he said is through his research that he has not found any unique characteristics that separate successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful entrepreneurs. So that goes to show you that anyone could be a successful entrepreneur as long as you're willing to put the time and effort into it. And another interesting thing, this will be the last one, and then I'll let y'all go out and get out of here, start studying for your test or whatever. Just saying it's no more risky to start your own company than it is to actually work for another company. I think that is true, but at the same time, Not true because it's nice having that guaranteed paycheck, but what he's getting at is he used GM for an example. Is these companies could go bankrupt, or they could be doing something unethical like Enron was doing or WorldCom, and then ultimately you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your retirement that you put into that company because it all goes under. So at the end of the day, you could take a risk whether you step out on your own or whether you just decide to work for another company. So if you have an idea, it's actually good to try it if you think that you have what it takes. So I think that was two pretty interesting points that he pointed out about there being no characteristics that separate successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful ones, and also that if one of your concerns about stepping out on your own is the risk of failure or no I had one blank no what do you gosh way to end it right no job security. Let's just put it that way. My head went blank. Sorry. Um, so pretty much saying there's no difference between the two. I thought that was pretty interesting, but
it is more responsibility.
a lot more responsibility. But you get a lot more freedom when being your own boss too. If it's successful and you have it running, you don't have to answer to anyone but yourself. But at the same time, it does come with a lot more stress because it's your baby per se. You have to make sure that it's doing everything it's supposed to be doing, and it ultimately falls on you. So that's all I have for you. I don't know if anyone has anything else they want to add to it, or that's good, or
I think you actually hit on every note that I wrote down.
really.
So I don't know if I have anything to add.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought creating barriers to entry is probably one of the things I got took away from, because if you can shut out your competitors and get a patent for like exclusivity with a supplier, that's probably like one of the best things
Right.
you can do. That you already talked about it. So.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, that's what I did. I was just going through thinking this first thing that came to my head, and like I said, I just like having these open discussions because a lot of times, just same thing as customers' wants and needs. They're all different, so obviously, people can pull out different stuff out of this stuff. So it's interesting. I like having these open discussions and going through this kind of stuff. But that's all I have for class today, and no reflection paper or anything. I just wanted to have the discussion instead. So, but obviously, this could be free game for the final because we've covered it. But once again, I will give everyone a good detailed study guide again leading into that final, so there's nothing to stress about. And that's all I have for everyone. So if that's it, then I hope everyone has a good day, and thank you for your time.